Welcome to the QIS Financial Accountability module. Today we'll be looking at 4 standards relating to the topic of staff. The number of staff you have will vary depending on the size of your organisation, but all staff will probably have some interaction with finance in their role, whether that is claiming expenses with petty cash or being responsible for the bookkeeping. It is very important that staff are aware of their financial duties and responsibilities, and it is important to have systems, policies and procedures in place to protect staff and to protect the resources of the organisation. The first standard that we will look at is all staff are aware of and recognise their financial responsibilities. So the first step in making sure that all staff are aware of their financial duties and responsibilities is that managers know what the financial duties are for each person. Some duties will apply to all staff, for example, collecting receipts for any transaction they carry out on behalf of the organisation. And some will only be relevant to finance staff, such as reconciling all bank and cash accounts. If you haven't done so before, take some time to think about what the financial responsibilities are for each person and what the financial tasks are within your organisation. The next step is to make sure that staff know what their own responsibilities are. This should be included in a written job description and included as part of a new staff induction. It should also be covered in policies, especially the finance policy, but also perhaps a code of conduct. Ongoing appraisals and monitoring of performance will help identify where staff are unsure of their responsibilities or need further guidance or training. The second standard is all financial duties are shared between at least 2 people. There are 2 main reasons why this standard is important. Firstly, it protects against fraud and misuse of funds in your organisation by ensuring that one person is not solely responsible for any step of the financial process. Secondly, it is sometimes easier to check for errors if more than one person is involved. Some examples of this would be requiring 2 signatories to sign for any transaction, or one person being responsible for receiving money, one person banking, and another person entering in the books of account. This depends on the capacity of your organisation, but there should at least be a checking and authorisation process from managers, line managers, or board members. Thinking about your organisation, are all financial duties shared between at least 2 people? If not, what could you do to make sure this happens? The third standard is authority for financial resources is clearly delegated from the governing body through the line management structure, so it is clear who is responsible for what and within what time limits. So all staff should know what they can or cannot spend within their work, and there should be a process of authorisation in order to do so. If you have petty cash, there should be limits as to how much can be spent in one transaction, and you might have levels of authorisation for other transactions. For example, a manager can approve expenditure to a particular limit, or board members must approve expenditure over a certain limit. These should be clearly noted in your financial policy, and staff should be aware. For timing, it's important for staff to know when they should submit accountabilities or records of expenditure, and also for finance staff to know their time frame of budget and reporting and monitoring. The final standard in the topic of staff is that all staff, finance and others, receive adequate training to carry out their financial responsibilities. This is an additional advisory standard within the QIS verification, but is something to consider within the capacity of your organisation. Depending on the size of your organisation and the level of financial duties, the level of training required would be different. For staff with limited financial responsibilities, you might carry out basic in-house training. But for staff with additional finance responsibilities, you might consider some external training. Even if your staff have relevant qualifications, there may be particular areas where extra, more specific training would be beneficial. For example, procurement or budget monitoring. To summarise, whether you are a manager or a staff member, consider your financial responsibilities within the organisation, and if you have noticed any gaps, how can you take steps to address these?